and particularly about the government's latest major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs, with £100 million of your and my hard-earned money in a boost for border security. What's it going to go on this time? Oh, does it really matter? Does it really matter what it goes on? They could spend it on teddy bears. For all we know, it still won't make a difference if you've got the pull factor of once you get here, you're going to get given a hotel. 3-star, 4-star, 1-star, either way, it is a damn sight better than living in a camp in Calais, is it not? And you're going to be given maybe a mobile phone, you're going to get NHS treatment, you're going to get given freebies to the cinema, you're going to get given food. And oh yeah, by all means, steal a bike and then you can work as a delivery driver for, illegally on the black market for food to takeaway companies. And then you get to keep the money and or give some of that money to the people who you paid from the smuggling gangs. And by the way, you're never ever going to be deported realistically, even if you're found not to be legitimate, which most of you aren't. You're not ever going to actually leave the country. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they spend that 100 million quid on, does it? Because the pull factors are always going to be there. And if people want to come here, there's always going to be a smuggling gang member who's willing to smuggle them here. So tell us your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. Lots of messages still coming in on that. Sam Armstrong, I'm delighted to say, still joins us. He's a commentator and all-round sane man. Sam, we talked a lot about this today, but it is still mind-blowing. And you were saying, like literally every Monday, we get these sort of embargoed announcements. So on Sunday, I think, oh, here's the headline for Monday morning. And it is just, it's getting embarrassing now. I mean, Tories did it, stopping the boats, not. They went up and up, smashing the gangs. I mean, we all knew it was laughable. We thought at least the Tories, or at least some of them, might vaguely actually want to stop the boats. I don't think Kier Starmer or Yvette Cooper or anyone else they put out even vaguely... I don't think they even think it's a problem. I think they genuinely believe, from my conversations with them and things they've said and done previously, they're worried about losing their seats to Reform at the next election. So they're worried about doing it. But in terms of what they actually say to each other in their private WhatsApp groups and at their dinner parties, at the breakfast table with their families, is they really don't think there's a problem with all these people coming over here illegally. They actually don't think it's a problem. And they think the people, especially the women and children even, who are outside the Bell Hotel in Epping or the Britannia Hotel or the Thistle Hotel, the Barbican, that they are just ghastly, racist, xenophobic bigots who are stirring up trouble.
Julia, I've never had much truck with the Labour Party, but I came of age during the Blair period, didn't really like them then. But I have always had in my heart this view that the Labour Party did serve a purpose. It was the voice of the working people of this country, that it was there to stand up for the working man that went out for work, often had a bad deal from their bosses in the factories and all the rest of it. They knew who their people were and they wanted to stand up for them. And I wouldn't have voted for Michael Foot or Neil Kinnock or any of these people, but they knew who they were there to represent and they were doing it. This lot look at British working class people that are expressing concerns about the falling living standards that they are going through. Working people, and they view them with not just disdain, but a degree of disgust.
Yes.
A degree of shame, contempt, embarrassment. The Labour Party, the supposed voice of working people in this country, is embarrassed about the working classes. And that is an almighty betrayal. They were there. They literally were founded to stand up for these people. So is it any wonder that working people in this country are growing more and more upset? And Angela Eagle can go on the telly and with a nasally voice, she can say,
we don't have to. Well, okay,
anger doesn't get you anywhere. She does have a silly voice, right? She does.
She's not very convincing.
She is not a very convincing voice. She can say anger doesn't get you anywhere, but these working people, these people of this country that have gone to work every single day, have tried their best, have tried voting for parties that promised they would do something, they haven't done it, so no wonder they're angry.
And again, every time I talk to people who are ordinary law-abiding people, again, who've never even had a parking ticket, and when I say to them, I think we might be heading for some dangerous territory, and to a man and woman they say, good. Because we need to have that wake-up call, and that is a terrible, terrible scenario to be in. Well, look, let's talk about this and lots of other topics as well with Baroness Kate Hoey. She's an independent peer, former Labour MP, and joins us right now. Good afternoon to you, Kate.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, what did you make of, another Monday, another major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs?
Well, it just seems like they feel that every now and again, if they announce something new, something vaguely relating to migrants, that will kind of stop people feeling angry and concerned.
It's sort of look over here. Don't look at those asylum seekers on the boats or the people committing crimes. Look over here.
And every single initiative that they've sort of announced has been pretty meaningless. And the other thing that really worries me is this idea that they're now going to speed up the dealing with some of these migrants and asylum seekers and they've taken on a lot more staff to do that. Now that worries me because I don't know what training they're getting. I don't know what they're told. And, there is this genuine worry, I think, that there might just be, it's much easier if you just tick a box and say, OK, you can come in.
Yes.
And of course, once that happens, then not only is it costing us what it's already cost us, but it's going to cost us huge amounts more because they're then be entitled to everything else.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing. There is actually a record, and we're often told, well, a huge percentage of these people, we say, they're economic migrants, they're illegal, they don't have a right to be here. And then the left will point to this, like, no, actually, when you actually look at the appeals, huge number of these people get to stay. But actually, what a lot of this is either under very, very spurious human rights grounds, like, or my Albanian son doesn't want to eat Albanian chicken nuggets, or a paedophile getting to stay because of he has his children. I mean, as if they benefit from having him around, and all those awful cases. But there's also people who are not granted asylum, but they are granted basically indefinite leave to remain. They're basically told they can stay, but they're not granted asylum because there's no chance of getting rid of them. And then the idea is, I think the government's view will be, well, they're no longer on the asylum backlog. They're no longer making appeals and costing money. They're no longer people we have to deport or whatever. People will go, oh, that problem's been solved. What they do is they disappear into society, and we go, well, we're not paying for them in a hotel anymore, but we're still paying for their accommodation because, bizarrely, these people are not all high earners and they're going to be needing accommodation. And what a surprise, they're foreign and they go to the top of the housing list.
They will, exactly. That's what I was going to say. They will all be put on the housing list, and we know just how long housing waiting lists are, and people waiting with their families for years to get somewhere decent. So all of this is adding up to, I think, what we're seeing now, quite spontaneous protests.
But you say spontaneous. I mean, I don't think they're being mostly. I mean, there's some. They're not being organised by. They're genuinely local people concerned about, allegations. A lot of this stuff is live criminal charges. But, again and again, we've got, girls being raped, alleged to be the asylum seekers. We've got a 12-year-old girl being raped and alleged, charges against 2 asylum seekers in a local place, and a girl, a 10-year-old, being abducted. And again, arrest as of the person who's alleged to committed this crime, an asylum seeker. These aren't one-offs. These are just the ones we know about. There will be others, and of course they have to go through the full course of the justice system. But people are understandably concerned. But do you think there is kind of a change in the feel, and that people now feel emboldened and they feel they've got no choice but to stand up?
Yeah, I think all the attempts by government and by other bits of the media to kind of say that anyone who was out protesting was some kind of racist and far right. You just have to look at those mums that were out over the weekend in Canary Wharf, and the fact that they were all cheerfully and singing, and they were just there to show that they were concerned. Now, clearly, we can't have people coming along to those protests just to cause trouble. But the police could deal with that. They could arrest them. They never seem to want to stop people from either side, either pro or anti, who do kick up and actually do something. They don't seem to do that. And the other thing that really upsets me about this government is that they just won't be honest. They won't even say, oh, yes, we know that the majority of these migrants coming in are not asylum seekers. Yeah. They won't admit to it, and they're terrified of kind of being in any way upsetting their hard left, who think that, there should be open borders, basically. I think that's probably what a lot of the Labour MPs actually would like to see.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And that's the thing. Nigel Farage, the Reform leader, he's had a press conference today, and he's talked about the rising public anger about this issue. Now, he was, of course, when he first was, out there in the Channel on a boat pointing to all these boats, this shocking imagery. I mean, we've been shocked previously by people sort of being taken out of lorries and a huge number of asylum seekers in the backs of lorries. But I think these young men on these boats, I think, really horrified people. And again, everyone just shouted, well, from the government, left and right, far right, just keep shouting far right at him. But, the reality is the public were going, I don't think this is a good idea. And no, when the Treasury Minister, Darren Jones, says they're mostly women and children, we've got eyes. We can see that they're mostly fighting-age young men.
I think all of that is now being, people are literally just ignoring what the government are saying on this issue. Yeah. And, they really need to get a grip, because, no one wants to see protests that land up with violence. But, people are so angry and so frustrated all over the country. It's not just in London.
No, exactly. So it's absolutely around the country. You were a Labour MP. You knew a lot of these people who are now in government. You were always a little bit of an independent soul anyway on quite a lot of issues. But you served in government. What do they really think behind the scenes? Because the conversations I've had with Labour people on and off air, I think a lot of the Tories, they kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them wanted to do something about it, but just didn't really have the guts to do what was necessary in terms of actually being hard-nailed about it. And they're too worried about the headline in The Guardian or the BBC to actually do the job that the British people want. But what do the Labour people actually really think about this?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of very, very new MPs who have been handpicked and chosen to be loyal. And they are not going to speak out. But, some of them in those areas, particularly where there are hotels, where there are being protests, I mean, they must begin to feel, look, there is something wrong about this. We've got to speak out now.
But what about Kier Starmer and Angela Rayner? Do they look at this and think, yeah, it's just far right bigots, there's nothing wrong? Or do they actually recognise it's probably not a good idea to have tens of thousands of illegal migrants living freely in our communities?
I don't think Kier Starmer does at all, because I think Kier Starmer is just first and foremost a lawyer, sees everything through the eyes of international law or European Court of Human Rights and all of that. I think the Deputy Prime Minister actually probably does, because she comes from a background where she must be talking to people on the ground, and she must know that what Labour is doing is certainly, throwing money at something that's not actually going to solve it. And unless we do, I think more and more people are beginning to realise that unless we actually take back the independence from the European Court of Human Rights, we're never really going to be able to grasp this. Because you mentioned it about the courts now, they just follow European law. European courts, the human rights law, and they won't even send back hardened criminals because they might actually, get a slap on the wrist when they get
properly insane. And you've seen the outcry of the British media, and indeed a lot of the mainstream media in the United States as well, at what Donald Trump's doing. Right, okay, there needs to be proper procedure. You need to make sure that people are who they say they are. But for the deportation of illegal migrants, but he's been here 15 years. I don't care. If you're in a country illegally, you get deported. Why are people outraged by this?
I think what worries me too, Julia, is that there are a lot of very hard-working migrants who came here legally many years ago, have settled in, have been involved themselves in the local community, have got small businesses, and they are going to end up suffering if we don't sort this out.
Absolutely,
that is very, very wrong.
Absolutely. I'll tell you how we're going to sort this out, and it's a little ugly head appeared again this morning, as it always does, because we know that for Labour, as a general rule, the solution to most problems is digital ID cards. And Radio 4 were talking about that this morning. They love it. This idea that, but if everybody has a digital ID card, then we'll know who's allowed to legally be here and to legally work and not legally work. I mean, they're having an absolute laugh, aren't they? If they genuinely think that the people who are working as Uber riders or delivery riders or working in a car wash or a nail bar, that they are going out of their way to make sure that those people have got the correct ID, can work here. I've employed people before. You can easily check whether someone can work here or not. They'll have paperwork that shows you it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they don't. Most of the people who are employing people who are illegally working don't really care. And I can't see that ID cards would actually make a difference, because who's going to police the fact that they even check the ID cards? Anyway, most of those people, we don't even know which country they came from. Never name actually get them an ID card. I just think ID cards is another way of the state gradually getting a grip over everything that we do, and we're seeing that with online. Things being taken offline now with the new legislation. So I opposed ID cards originally, and I can't see that there's any way that would solve the real issue and the problems that we've got.
No, indeed. I mean, again, you know that, I know that. It won't stop them doing it, though. Can I ask you about another issue we were discussing a little bit earlier, involving the plan to bring 300 very sick children from Gaza to the treatment on the NHS here. We've already had some children who've been brought over privately funded and long time to get visas to be treated here in the UK. Now the government is planning to bring over 300 children to be treated on the NHS. They're obviously allowed to bring a family member or two, probably a sibling or two, as well as their parents. What do you make of that decision when we have huge numbers of people on waiting lists, including children, in the NHS, and we have many countries in the Middle East very close to Gaza, countries like, say, Qatar, who have been happily funding Hamas for many years and supporting them, who have fabulous first-class hospital facilities. If we really wanted to help these children, could we not pay for them to go to Qatar rather than flying them over here or any other country in the Middle East? Do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's probably got the right intentions, although I think some of the intentions are in terms of government to make their own backbenchers feel that they're doing something even more about Palestine. I think you're absolutely right. They will bring their families, and then there will be very great difficulty in ever getting them to leave. And I've never understood, well, I do understand why so many of the neighbouring Arab countries, first of all, don't want to take any refugees from Gaza. And certainly now it sounds like they're not particularly interested in taking young children in particular who need really, good medical care. So our government, instead of just sort of saying a kind of plucking a figure out, saying 300, they should be actually working on those other governments to say, why are you not taking some of these really, really badly injured children?
Well, also, here's the thing. If Hamas didn't place their rocket launchers and their tunnels entrances under hospitals and base themselves on hospitals, then maybe the hospital care would be better in Gaza right now, and those children wouldn't need to be flown anywhere. But we know perfectly well those children, they'll come here. They are going to push other British people, British children, further down the NHS waiting list because, these guys, these surgeons think, they're not going to be operating on a Sunday at 3 a.m. They're going to be operating the normal time. That's an operation that's going to be delayed for a British child. And then the winner of the family, and then, of course, all of their other extended family members will eventually have a right to come here because someone madly thought that if you just knew someone in England and you spoke a bit of English, you could have a right to come to this country. I mean, the British public, we want to be nice, we want to be kind. I'm happy, if we're going to help, lovely. It's all going to make lots of donations to Médecins Sans Frontières or International Red Cross or whatever, so that they could be flown to Qatar. But, I don't want a single one of those children or their family members in this country. We are talking about a radicalised, dangerous population. Yes, the civilians are also dangerous. I don't want any of them in this country. And if that makes me a bad person, I don't care.
Well, I think, Julia, you probably speak for a very, very substantial number of people in the country, because once you start this, where does it end? If we take 300, the next thing there'll be somebody saying, well, why aren't we taking 500? Why aren't we taking 1,000? And of course, there are terrible things happening all over the world that, for some reason, don't get the publicity that what's happening in Palestine does. I looked recently at what was happening in Syria and those appalling things of Christians. Even in Nigeria, a Commonwealth country, where Christians in a church just recently were literally all killed just overnight, just like that. And nobody talks about that. And for some reason, we've got this obsession at the moment about Palestine. And it is awful what's happening. And there are faults on all sides. But ultimately, Hamas is to blame. And until Hamas is destroyed, I don't see how Kier Starmer can possibly say that he would recognise a Palestinian state, because it's
quite absurd, isn't it? Well, look, I also want to touch on one final topic back here at home, and that is two-tiered justice. We've had a teacher. There's some extraordinary stories about two-tiered justice. We've had a teacher who has been sacked for criticising two-tier justice in the Lucy Connolly case, saying that what she wrote was wrong, but that she shouldn't have been imprisoned for it. Now, I was thinking, oh, well, was this teacher giving their political opinion in a classroom full of children? That seems a bit weird. No, this was a teacher who gave their opinion online, on their own private social media account. And the reason why it came to the notice of the authorities at the school he worked for was because his own union, the National Education Union, flagged it up, and he has now been sacked for giving his opinion on a major story on social media. What do you make of that? Well,
it is shocking, and I'm very glad that the Free Speech Union, which I would suggest anyone who's listening to this programme or watching it should actually join the Free Speech Union, because it's going to be needed more and more. And I think it is shocking. And what is even more shocking is that it looks like the trade union is actually not even beginning to think of defending its own member, but is actually the one that is attacking its own member. And, you know, if we're getting to this stage where someone is actually sacked from their public job because of something they've said, which wasn't threatening anyone, which wasn't threatening violence, which was simply saying they thought perhaps this sentence was too long, which I do as well, and so does many, many people. I just think we're getting into a really a situation where, you know, we don't want to overblow it, but we really are getting into a kind of state-run kind of police state, which is just shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Baroness Kate Hoey, always a voice of reason. Thank you so much for joining us. Independent peer, former Labour MP. Sam Armstrong joining us now. Sam, you're a commentator, but you also do a lot of work with the Free Speech Union. This concerns this teacher, Simon Pearson. He teaches at Preston College. And again, I mean, there was a complaint from a representative of the National Education Union at the college, who found his online post had the potential to bring it into disrepute. And he was sacked at the college. I mean, for something he wrote on social media expressing a perfectly, I would say, majority opinion in this country about a case. He wasn't bringing politics inappropriately into the classroom.
No. And look, let's forget a minute that I think this is a fairly deliberate attempt to send a signal to people that you shouldn't be talking about these issues. Let's just deal with the fact that he was reported by the National Education Union, because I think this goes to the heart of so much what we've been talking today about, which is unions used to be there to stand up for working people, for their members, their representatives. Instead, what they have become over the past 10, 15, 20 years is a kind of tool of this new elite that are here.
Policing our language, policing our views.
What the hell is a union doing shopping in a teacher to management saying sack this person? That's literally the opposite of what a union is meant to do. A union is meant to be there to stand up for you, to help you, to represent you in a situation like that.
Or is it just none of their business?
And is it any wonder that so many traditional union members are running along to the Free Speech Union and saying, look, if it's me, the thing I'm most likely to get in trouble for is for saying something, for expressing my common sense beliefs.
I've never been a member of the National Union for Journalists for the very reason. It's basically a socialist organisation. They do too much politicking. They're not there to actually represent their members.
But it's really, really dangerous, because working people are at the bottom of the ladder in this country. They don't necessarily have the biggest voice. They do need people to stand up for them, and they have been betrayed systematically by their politicians, by their unions.
Bearing in mind the National Education Union didn't even stand up for the Batley Grammar School teacher. Never made a statement, never said a word, never did anything, but he's still in hiding with his family. What, 4 years on? 5 years on? Never said a word about it. Don't care. A teacher in France, the Repeti, had his head cut off. You know, he literally died as well. The same threats were made to this teacher for doing his job. Not a word. Not bothered whatsoever, but they're probably still campaigning for kids to wear masks in school classrooms because they're lunatics. Every teacher, I mean, you should not be a member of that union. You really shouldn't. There are so many other teachers' unions that are much saner. But yeah, it's just extraordinary. Again, there's never any penalty for it, is there? And the key thing is there, every time there's a story like this, the Free Speech Union stands up for them and tries to fight, and they win their case. They always win. Your victory rate is superb. But it's the impact on millions of other people that just says, shh, don't make trouble, keep quiet. And every time people keep quiet, this problem gets worse. That's why everyone has to stop keeping quiet. We did it over the trans madness. We're doing it gradually over net zero. We did it over lockdown. We're going to do it over all of this, the two-tier justice issue as well.